Jace, 10 stop! Letting out a beast. Like roar, Soren simply smacked him across the face with the scabbard of his blade. A crisp smack. Pick up your blade and stand up straight. What is the use of talking tough after losing? Do you have some old bastard to stand up for you? Looking at the blade kicked toward him, Jace was utterly dumbfounded. The other man had already sheathed his sword and turned his back. This meant that, in Soren's eyes, he was utterly harmless. Jace had always believed he was the most concealed figure in the entire magistracy. After his private talk with the Demon Suppression Bureau lieutenant, both his insight and strength had far outstripped his peers. The only reason he still had to suffer under Soren's thumb was that he hadn't allowed himself enough time to mature. If only he had more time. But reality dealt him a crushing blow. If he wasn't mistaken, Soren's seemingly casual moves clearly carried the essence of the demon. Subduing blade technique, even a sense of perfection that had been ingrained into instinct. Reaching complete mastery, his strikes were faster, his force greater, and he knew this martial art far better. That was why he could so easily dismantle Jace's attack. Jace picked up his blade, muttering to himself,
But the Demon Suppression Bureau lieutenant only taught this martial art 3 years ago. How could you have cultivated it to perfection?
Soren walked up to a group of yamen runners collapsed on the ground.
Where are they?
Zhang Dahu opened his mouth, but for a long moment couldn't get out a single coherent sentence.
People.
Our boss here, he is a master at drinking, finger-gassing games, and betting women. But since when did he get so good with a blade? Soren sighed and kicked him, sending him flying half a meter away. I asked you, where are they? The previous owner of this body sure left a lot of loose ends. One could say Soren was like a broker, living off his yamen salary, while wholeheartedly serving the needs of all sorts of fiends. Unlike the dog demons under Yellowhide's command, whose simple minds wanted nothing more than to eat humans. On the other side, there was a group of old apes who lusted after women, especially those not yet fully grown, but were naturally cruel. The women the previous host sent over would all be toyed with to death within a few months, so the demand was high. This time, the demands of the two sides conflicted. The original host had prepared 6 girls for the old apes, all of whom had not yet come of age, one of them being the girl from the Vance family. But then, the dog demons took a liking to the Vance family's people, left with no choice. The original host had no option but to turn his eyes to Jace's younger sister. Though she was slightly overage, her looks were far better than those malnourished, scrawny girls. What a beast. Soren shook his head, his gaze growing even sharper. He had thought that after suffering so much in his past life, he had seen through the fickleness of human relationships. But until finding himself in this chaotic world, he hadn't realized that there were depths to suffering. Zhang Daho realized the boss was genuinely angry, not just putting on a show for that Chen kid. Rubbing his stomach, he scrambled up from the ground and swiftly led the way for the others. Seeing this, Jace also hurriedly followed, burning with anxiety, leaving the yamen after no more than 2 streets. Zhang Dahu turned into a tea house on the street corner. Behind the latrine, in a vegetable patch, several girls were tightly bound, covered in mud, barely breathing, evidently starved for a long time.
The old women from the brothel hadn't had time to come and dress them up, so they looked a bit ugly. Actually, with a little rouge and powder, they'd be presentable.
A runner came up to explain, worried that the boss would think they were slacking off. He was cut off mid-sentence as Zhang Daho shoved him aside.
Boss, these are their contracts with their parents' handprints. They're all here. They're all born of mothers and fathers. We feel for them too. But there is really no other way.
Soren took the stack of contracts, and after a moment of silence, said, Go buy some rice, flour, and salt. Also buy pork. Lots of it, and be quick.
All of me!
Zhang Daho turned and left. Having followed boss Soren for many years, he knew well how ruthless the man was. Those brothers who had ever doubted him had ended up filling the bellies of fiends. He knew not to ask a single question he shouldn't. I said, Bye. A cold reminder came from behind. Zhang Dahu froze, turned back, and met Soren's clear eyes, missing the old ruthlessness, and carrying no hint of threat. Yet for some reason, Zhang Dahu suddenly felt the urge to urinate. his legs involuntarily clamping together.
Understood, with silver, of course. Rest assured.
Soren looked ahead again. Jace, his face clouded with gloom, silently reached out to untie the ropes on one of the girls. As the saying goes, beauty is all relative. Amidst this group of dark, scrawny girls, Chen Jinyu's slender frame, though fragile, lacked that malnourished look. Even covered in mud, her skin couldn't hide its fair delicacy. And, having just been captured, her complexion wasn't as pale and weak as the others. Her refined features carried a scholarly air, evoking a pitiable, delicate charm. Her refined features carried a scholarly air, evoking a pitiable, delicate charm. With such beauty, it was no wonder the original host had his eyes on her. Having a constable brother to look after her, she had lived a bit more comfortably than the other girls. Jace clenched his jaw, helping his sister up to sit on the blue stone. Normally, if anyone dared to hurt this girl, his blood would boil and he'd draw his blade to strike. But now, he silently vented his anger by digging his nails into his palms. Soren withdrew his gaze, crouched down to untie the remaining girls. Under their terrified stares, he brushed the back of his hand over each of their foreheads. The weather had been cold lately. Catching a chill would be troublesome. Fortunately, they were only suffering from extreme hunger and thirst. And aside from that, none were seriously harmed.
Master Shin.
The youngest girl among them looked barely 12 or 13, and her voice trembled. Soren let out a wry laugh. The notoriety of his predecessor had even reached such a young child. He wiped the mud off her face with his thumb, gently patted her head, and said, "Rest a bit. I'll send you home soon." A group of bailiffs returned carrying bundles of various sizes. Soren stood up, glanced at Jace, who was crouching there. Clenching his fist so hard, he seemed to want to dig his nails into his palm, and said helplessly, "That is enough. We're not off duty yet." With that, he led the girls out of the tea house. "The rest of you, get your SS back to the guardhouse. Put down the things and let him carry them." Hearing this, Jace nearly laughed out of anger. Treating his own sister like this, and you still dare to make me work as your porter. Chen Jinyu looked dazed, biting her thin lip. Perhaps because she was a bit older compared to the other girls' panic, she appeared somewhat more composed.
Brother, I am fine. Go attend to your business.
She knew her brother's temper best in such a situation. Even she would find it difficult to dissuade him. Therefore, she mustn't show panic. That wouldn't solve anything, and would only cause more trouble. "Hurry up, dawdle any longer, and it'll be dark." Soren's voice came from outside again. The brusque words made Chen Jinyu's heart tighten, and her gaze toward Jace was tinged with a bit more worry. To her surprise, her brother sullenly got up and actually reached out to hoist the bag of rice and flour onto his shoulder.
Follow me. Once off duty, I'll take you home.
Seeing this, Chen Jinyu was momentarily stunned, then couldn't help but look outside, curiosity flickering in her eyes.